Grand. I think we've got everyone who's joining us today. So first of all, welcome. Thank you so much for making the time in your diary to be with us. A few housekeeping items before we get started. All participants will be muted during today's presentation, but we would really love it if you asked questions. You can do that in the question panel on the right-hand side of your screen. Hopefully you're used to the drill by now. Today's webinar will be recorded and you'll receive a copy of the recording by email within the next 24 hours. Please do share it with your colleagues. I'm sure they'll be interested in what James has to say. So first of all, a couple of introductions. My name is Laura Hillier and I'm Marketing Director at Bullhorn. I think I've met a few of you in my time here. I started my career as a recruiter, spending hard yards in the days before great CRMs existed, basically bashing the phones. Needless to say, I'm a better marketer than I am a recruiter, but it instilled in me an absolute love of the industry and utter respect for the challenges it entails. At Bullhorn, we exist to minimise those challenges, and if you haven't already, please do visit bullhorn.com for more information on our products and services, but not until we've finished speaking to you today. Okay, plug over. I'm really happy today to be joined by James Osborne. Actually, he probably needs no introduction. Chairman of the Recruitment Network, he describes his goal as enabling recruitment organisations to drive performance and profitability with purpose. And he's spent the many, many months of the pandemic slaving away doing just that. Today, he joins us to share his 3 big ideas to help you survive and thrive as we all emerge from our caves. Anything to add, James?
No, I've got plenty more ideas than just 3, but I've tried to condense it down to 3 simple ones for today, so I hope that's going to be okay.
Fabulous. So before we hand over to James, just a little bit of a recap from me. We're now a year on from the unprecedented events of March 2020 and what followed. Hope is finally on the horizon, certainly in the UK. Vaccine rollout is starting to look like an unqualified success. The NHS is rapidly moving away from breaking point, and all other markers of the pandemic are moving in the right direction. We can even start to think about holidays again, although I'm not sure anybody wants to go to the Faroe Islands. Recruitment businesses like yours across the country are assessing, yet again, what this means for their businesses, your businesses. Of course, the fundamentals of recruitment have not and will not change, and nor should some of the underlying principles of how we all work. This isn't about replacing what we used to do pre-COVID with radically different practices and groundbreaking new processes. But the reality is the landscape we work in is now quite different, and this presents huge amounts of opportunity. Opportunity to be more productive, more efficient, more scalable, and more profitable, not by revolution, but by evolution. It was an immensely challenging year inside and outside the industry. I'm pretty sure everyone is in agreement on that. But it's taught us 3 things. 1, remote and flexible work isn't only possible, but the way forward. As you can see, I'm still in my home office and James is happily ensconced in his shed quarters. This will inevitably affect both internal and external hiring. 2, digital transformation is absolutely necessary. Not just on-prem to cloud, which of course were buzzwords that we heard right at the start of the pandemic, but now future-proofing through AI and other solutions to make sure your business is fit for now and for the future. And 3, with that in mind, your tech stack is completely fundamental to being ahead of the curve, and maybe more importantly, ahead of your competition. Your CRM and any partner extensions are the key to profitability. So, keeping those 3 lessons in our heads, I'm going to turn it over to James. He's going to share, well, just 3 of his many, many ideas, it seems, to help you take those lessons I just outlined and turn them into ways to thrive in 2021. James, over to you.
Laura, thank you very much indeed, and a perfect intro as well. So hi everybody, lovely to see you all, or virtually see you all, as we've all been doing for the last sort of 12 to 18 months. Very pleased to say we're starting to come out of our little bubbles now, though, and starting to have a bit more sense of normality, which is great. So I just want to follow on from what Laura was talking about and just share some, I suppose, my thoughts and ideas of what I've seen happen and happening probably quite successfully, actually, over the course of the last 12 months in particular. I'm going to kick it off with this particular quote that you can see on the screen there, which was, "We cannot go back and start over, but we can certainly begin now and make a new ending." And I think it'd be fair to say that it's been an extraordinary year where we've all learned a hell of a lot. And in some parts of it, actually, that's quite a good thing, I think. I think, as Laura quite rightly said, the fundamentals of recruitment have not, and they certainly will not ever change. Okay, the phone is still your best sales tool, so don't worry about that. None of that sort of stuff is going to go away. But in order to succeed in tomorrow's world, and when I define success as doing significantly better than we were doing yesterday, or certainly pre-COVID, the focus of recruitment leaders now must shift away from many, what I think are some of the real superficial measurements of success that we used to covet, such as turnover, headcount, presenteeism, even some of the inputs that we looked at, supplier agreements, hierarchies, etc. And instead move towards business models that I think are fixated on directly impacting three key drivers of a great recruitment business, which I'm going to try and summarize very quickly today in people, positioning, and profits. I'm going to start off first of all with the people side of things. Now, we know recruitment by its nature is a people industry. In its most simplistic form, we basically place people into jobs, and generally we're damn good at it too. And I think we've proven that over COVID. But we do have a tendency to shape our ways of working around very traditional client-led hierarchical people structures, where we tend to put our customers at the top of the hierarchy, with our candidates and even our own people following below. We basically think and act first as suppliers, where we work to our customers' terms, and we generally build our internal systems around what our customers are asking us to do. Now, yes, we always want to put customers first, but actually from a business strategy point of view, I think that has its flaws, because this strategy is limiting. What it creates is an over-reliance on external elements that are generally out of our control. COVID, for example, has completely proven that to us. And we build business models that are built predominantly for the success of our customers. And if you think about how much contingent work you currently do, or how much we do as an industry, that will probably explain that. Whilst we pay less attention to the other two sets of people involved in the supply chain, our candidates and our employees, both of which are currently in very short supply, as I'm sure you're all pretty much aware. So business models now need to flatline the structure. All three have an equal value in the supply chain, and processes that we implement in our businesses need to account for that. We need to put far more emphasis now on our people and our candidates than we maybe have done before. The candidate user experience, for example, needs to reflect how we do things today. That needs to be fast, it needs to be agile, it needs to be responsive, and it needs to be without barriers. Nothing less than that will do. Internally, our model has to remove any possible anchors and restraints that prevent our people from being able to play to their real strengths at the moment. And sadly, our search for individual perfectionism, those top billers, actually does quite the opposite. I said recently in a blog that many recruitment businesses aren't particularly great at recruiting for themselves. And if I'm being very honest, I still think that's true. We're still poaching talent from the same diminishing talent pools of recruiters as our competition is, and we are now running out of talent. It's the simple reality of it. And I don't know many or any recruitment organization at the moment that's trying to scale or grow their business that isn't suffering from trying to find good talent and people to bring into their business. So then we go out to Rec to Recs, and there's some fantastic Rec to Recs out there, by the way, but we tend to squeeze the Rec to Recs on price and on our relationship, and then we wonder why we get little return from them. And ironically, we even then offer all our internal staff a referral fee of, let's say, £100 if they find a fantastic consultant to come and work with us, one of their friends to come and work for us. And yet we're paying Rec to Recs £5,000. The irony is extraordinary when you think about it. We look at the new graduates coming into the market and the potential of having new graduate talent in our businesses as a cost to today's P&L, but we don't look at them as tomorrow's investment for our top billers. And I think there's some amazing examples that we're seeing across the recruitment network community of people now embracing the graduate talent pools that are coming in and actually gearing their business up to be able to do so, especially or even in sort of a hybrid sort of virtual working model. So don't lose sight of that, because it's a big opportunity, especially when we're in these diminishing talent pools. But think about when it comes to recruitment itself, we don't even report internally on some of the internal recruitment metrics in the same way that we would do about some of our clients. One thing that we must never forget is that we are our best clients. We can never forget that. So when you're recruiting for yourself, you need to imagine you are your most profitable, highest GP performing customer, and therefore treat yourself accordingly. We can't dabble at our own recruitment and our own hiring right now. We need to invest in it significantly. A lot of organizations that I work with, we've actually got them over the course of the last 12 to 18 months, and even pre-COVID, we were doing this, to actually get them to invest in internal talent managers, people to help them drive their talent strategy internally. And that's not just about finding the best talent as well. That's also about being an absolute employer of choice, making sure that we are coaching, developing, supporting our people more so than ever before. I'm sure all of you on this call or on this webinar today are experiencing higher levels of staff turnover than ever before. We're seeing it all over the market. We're seeing recruiters leave the industry, go internally, take different types of jobs. And it's an issue we've got when we've got this diminishing talent pool that I talked about. So being an employer of choice right now, well, it's not really a choice anymore. It is now an absolute imperative. So think about your models of what you're doing as a business. Think about how you are setting your structures up and your stalls up when it comes to tomorrow's working environment. This is not about whether you should allow employees to work from home or work for an office. I think we can probably all guess that a hybrid working model is going to become the norm across the recruitment sector. I think that's probably about right, and I think it makes sense, and potentially one of the good things, if that's possible, to come out of COVID. But this is about creating a structure and a culture that creates greater employee commitment and growth, however you decide to work. There is no right or wrong. If you decide to have everyone back in your office full time, that is absolutely right if it fits your culture. If you decide to have a fully remote working environment, that is also right. But if you decide to have a hybrid, that's also fine as well. But if you do run with, let's say, a more remote working environment than you had before, or certainly pre-COVID, then you must be prepared to trade off some of the things that you will obviously naturally lose. Perhaps elements of innovation, for example, some of the cultural things that you've always really embraced when you had a fully office working environment. But you're going to have to replace that and trade those off with other things. Because actually, if you've got people maybe working a couple of days a week from home, you're going to get potentially greater productivity and greater engagement out of them, better retention of staff, and so on and so forth. So plan and strategize your business to allow some of the things that you may lose to be replaced by some other better things potentially as well, and build your business accordingly for that. So again, it doesn't matter if you're going to go into the office or work from anywhere. What matters is how you're gearing your businesses up to be able to cope with that and embrace that as an opportunity to get better retention, better engagement, better performance out of your staff. I've seen examples all over COVID of organizations that have seen increased productivity because people have been working from home, and I've seen decreased productivity as well. So there is no right or wrong, but what is right is what's right for your organization and your culture. So think about what you're doing to proactively supplement the things that may get diluted basically in tomorrow's world of work and tomorrow's way of working. Okay, Anna, if I could ask you just to jump forward one extra slide, please. Perfect, thank you. So let's look at positioning now as well. Now, at the start of the first COVID lockdown, we set off all the warning sirens for everyone to go out and cut all their costs, get rid of all their direct debits, hold on to as much cash as they possibly could. At the Recruitment Network, on the very first day of the first lockdown, as an organization, we actually went out to all of the members at TRN across the Recruitment Network, and we actually offered our services completely for free for 6 months to support them with that initiative, that actually cash is so important when you're in situations like this. It's always been really important in any organization, but I think we've had to really fixate on it this last 12 to 18 months. Just to make this fundamentally clear, the cash flow parts of your business is still fundamentally important. I have a slight concern that some recruitment organizations are sort of taking their eye off the ball a little bit when it comes to their cash reserves at the moment. Bear in mind, a lot of businesses are still running on borrowed cash at the moment when it comes to some of the loans that you might have, delayed payments and VAT, et cetera, et cetera. So make sure you're planning your cash flow carefully and you're reforecasting regularly on that. But over COVID and over the last 12 months, businesses, quite simply, they needed war chests. We needed to ensure that we had enough money in the bank, to ensure our immediate short-term survival, but also to give us the potential confidence to invest in the business as we started to come out of COVID as well. So what's been happening over this period? Well, we've all been working in these sort of short 90-day sprints as the COVID story sort of played out quarter by quarter over these last 12 months. And that the strategy, I think, has worked really, really well. We've been focusing very much short term, very much focusing on what we can control and influence every 90 days. And that's steered a lot of organizations very successfully through the last 12 months. But actually that story now has changed significantly, I think, and businesses now need to start adjusting their vision and rethink their positioning to look much, much further out, much more from a long-term perspective, because the short-termism, if that's an expression, I think it's an expression, the short-termism that we use actually means that we're missing some of the bigger opportunities that we're potentially facing. So think about that from a number of different aspects. Think about it from a business development point of view, first and foremost. BD, business development, is no longer about getting a quick deal done just to get cash in, which is what many of us and many recruitment organizations had to do over the COVID period. Okay, it was about going out there, winning in whatever business you can almost get your hands on a little bit, making sure the cash was coming in. Perm business was great because it created that cash reserves for us, but it was very short term. This is now, BD is now much more focused and strategizing around long-term relationships with your customers, the long-term positioning of our organizations with our customer base and within our industries as well. So this is more about moving out of that meeting room to the boardroom. You know, that expression I use a lot when you go on a client visit, and often the client will meet you in the meeting room at the front of the office. You don't want to be in that meeting room anymore. You want to now get into that client's boardroom. And that's exactly where we need to be positioning ourselves. There's a big push at the moment across a lot of organizations, your customers, when they're focusing on their boardrooms and the people committee that sits within those boardrooms. So what is everybody in that business doing to support the people initiative of their businesses? We need to make sure that we are sitting at that table with our customers, helping them align, helping them understand, helping them navigate the next 12, 18 months, 2-3 years when it comes to their people strategies. And that's a really important change, I think, in the recruitment sector, and something I think is very, very exciting for that matter. So we need to move away from this meeting room to the boardroom. We need to move away from being a supplier to our customers and to becoming more of a partner to our customers. We need to focus on building collaborative, mutually beneficial partnership agreements with our customers, not supply arrangements, but partnership agreements, two very, very different things. And this is as much as anything about being paid for our time, for our expertise, and being paid for what we're really worth. So I'm a massive fan, a huge, huge fan at the moment of recruitment organizations winning rolling monthly contracts. So they're getting paid for their activity and what they're doing on a day-to-day basis as much as they are for the outputs they're producing. And we've had so many successes over the last 12 months across TRN. We're having it before COVID actually, but COVID has really expedited this. Where recruitment organizations, recruiters are winning far more monthly recurring revenue stream type business, subscription modeling type business, where they're winning opportunities with customers on a 2-3 year contract rather than spot deals. Retainers have gone through the roof, as I'm sure many of you are experiencing. I think one of the reasons for that is because our customers have allowed us to get a lot closer to them over the COVID period. The Zoom and all that type of stuff has helped with that because we've had a lot more conversations with our customers. We need to embrace that and utilize that as a tool for our advantage. And a big part of this is about being able to forecast better in tomorrow's recruitment market. So I love the idea, and many organizations that I advise, we've been focusing on getting their budgets and their revenue streams within those budgets to be predictable revenue streams. So I'm sure many of you have experienced that or have heard of that expression before, when you know that you've got that business already locked in for the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months, etc. Traditionally, we've always been used to a contract book. Now that's a lot more than just contract books. There's different types of perm products that you could utilize, different types of talent products, which have that recurring revenue stream, that predictable revenue stream. It's really, really exciting. And it is without doubt, one of the really good things, if I'm allowed to say that, that is going to come out of this COVID period in particular. Ultimately, what this is all about is that recruiters and recruitment organizations need to be getting paid for their true worth, for the work that they put in as much as for the outputs that they deliver. And I think that's really exciting, but it means getting to the top table with our customers. And then the third one is around profit. Obviously, it sounds pretty obvious, but I'm still convinced that there are many recruitment organizations out there, many recruitment leaders, many businesses, just full stop for that matter, who, when they are identifying or they're building out their strategies for their business, they do what I refer to as a top-down strategy when it comes to their budgeting and their profit planning. And when I talk about top-down, it basically means we're doing lots and lots of stuff. We're generating lots of inputs. So we're trying to make as much money as we possibly can out of all the activity that we're doing. So, Anna, if you could flick on that slide for me, that'd be great. So if you think traditionally, what we tend to do is we work out our head count, we work out our GP per head count or our net fee income per head count. We work out how much headcount growth we can get out of that. And then we try to ascertain, will we be able to create some profit that will come out of that, and to what level? Can we get 20, 25% profit from our GP, 30%, and so on and so forth. But to me, I think that's a slightly flawed strategy. And any business that I work with, we try and get them to focus and fixate on a bottom-up strategy, which means let's identify what levels of profitability do you want to create in your business, and then re-engineer your business back up and your strategy and your structure back upwards to be able to allow you to create that levels of profitability. Coming into COVID, there's been a lot of businesses, I mentioned before, a lot of organizations who are pretty fixated on some of those things that just really aren't that important. Now, your headcount growth, how many headcount you've got in your business, your turnover, etc. I mean, I've had an organization who invited me to come to their celebratory £10 million turnover that they've just hit. They won't make any profit. So it was just like, well, it wasn't really much to celebrate as far as I'm concerned. Yes, they hit 10 million turnover, but there wasn't much else to celebrate on that particular one. And actually, a lot of businesses that came into COVID with good quality levels of profitability, percentage against their GP, are the ones that were sitting pretty during COVID, and the ones that were able to maintain their business, not as usual, not far off as usual, to ensure that not only did they capitalize on that period, but they're now coming out incredibly strong as well, which I think is really, really exciting. So I think the last 12 months has given us a really incredible opportunity to redesign how we work, what we do, how we sell, what we sell, and who we work with, all in the name of generating far more profit, far more profitable business, far more cash flow within our businesses in the future. And I think that's really, really exciting. It's almost, well, it is very sad that you had to have a global pandemic for us to sometimes realize some of these things. But this is an amazing opportunity if we embrace it. So some of the things that we are seeing happening at the moment, and happening incredibly effectively, and I think these are becoming more of the norm now than sort of the outliers, is that things like the automation of anything that in your business that is non-core, that is repetitive, and repetitive at scale for that matter. What we're trying to do now is, wherever we can, is automate those things so we can throw off greater productivity and performance per consultant, per person within the business. And I love the idea of benchmarking and measuring GP per consultant, but more importantly, profitability per consultant, based on the fact that we're making them better at doing what they are doing. Remember before we talked about how do we remove all the anchors from our consultants to be better performers, and I think automation and technology around that automation is fantastic for that. And again, this is one of the reasons why I do come on these sessions with the guys at Bullhorn, because look at some of the stuff that they're doing that allows you to be able to do that. It's phenomenal. And actually working collaboratively with the likes of Bullhorn and their team and their partners within the marketplace for that matter, you can really start streamlining the way that your consultants are working, and your expectations of the profitability outputs of your consultants now should be much, much higher than they were pre-COVID times. I think that's exciting. I think certainly organizations and recruiters now are walking away from poor business. Poor business meaning it's low margin, it's contingent potentially, it's very arm distance relationships where we can't really do our job properly as recruiters. And we're spending more time cultivating and winning and going after value clients and higher valuable clients. And I think this is really exciting. I came off a call this morning with one of the members that I was working with. They're going through all their figures and numbers for this quarter. It's been a great quarter. Last quarter. It was a great quarter last quarter. This quarter is looking absolutely superb, which is great, and a growth on that. But the challenge they've got, without a shadow of a doubt, is they've got too much business at the moment. They've got too many clients to work with. So they've got to prioritize. Otherwise, they will not be able to fulfill their jobs. They will not be able to hit their target. So they're prioritizing. They're walking away from poor business. They're going back to customers who generally have been poor business and saying to them that we are going to put you down the food chain from a process point of view, because actually there's better clients out there because of the way that they're working. So if you want to put yourself at the top of an agenda of a recruiter, you've got to work with your recruiter better. You've got to be realistic in what you're looking at paying your candidates. You've got to be flexible in your approaches, and so on and so forth. And that is getting customers now to wake up and smell the roses a little bit, which I think they need to do to an extent, because it's a challenging market out there from a candidate perspective. What else are recruitment organizations doing well? Well, they're becoming very sticky with their clients. And it's a word I love to use. How are you getting sticky with your customers, embedded with your customers? How are you penetrating deep into their supply chain? So it's hard to get rid of you, but also at the same time, you're increasing that customer lifetime value. So how much is a customer worth to you over a period of 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years? Do you know? Do you have a strategy to try and extend that customer lifetime value by duration as much as by value, and so on and so forth? And again, these are really important things where traditionally we as an industry, I think, have been very good at chasing new business and forgetting sometimes about actually how we can really maintain and get more profitability per customer out of our existing customer base. So that account management strategy, I think, has now really come to the forefront, which is great. And with all of that, there's a real remodeling going on at the moment of our org chart. So the way our businesses are structured and built out. And that, again, is just trying to push more profitability, contribution, yield per headcount within the business, and a greater focus, I suppose, on conversion at speed and scale. And a great example of that is a lot of the organizations that we work with now have embedded and brought in these resourcing teams within their business. So they've had 360 models in the past. They may still have some 360 recruiters within their business, but where the real focus and fixation is now is building up this resourcing talent pool and this resourcing team who are there just to do nothing else apart from convert at speed and convert at scale. And some of the, I was with an organization yesterday who have now got a resourcing team. I think they brought on 12 people in the last few months, which is just focused on conversion of business. That's really exciting, I think. And I think, again, if you can automate some of the processes they work with and use some clever technology to support that, you've got a very efficient little machine that sits underneath your core business that is just pushing everything up, the value up, the contribution up, and so on and so forth. And then the last thing, I suppose, when it comes to profitability is that, and again, COVID's done this a little bit, we had a lot of time to stop and navel gaze and look at ourselves and look in the mirror a little bit. And I think we all started to realize there's a whole bunch of things that we used to spend our money on, spend our time on, that were either just not needed or they just weren't throwing off enough return on investment. You can look at that from maybe a job board, maybe even your offices, and so on and so forth. So instead of reinvesting and back into the things that we used to do, we've now been given permission and time to reinvest our money into things where we're going to get the highest contributing return on investment. So stuff like proper RPO type technology. And just by the way, if you're not out there currently pushing RPO business, you absolutely should be. I don't care what you call it, by the way, whether you call it RPO or whether you call it whatever you want to call it, is absolutely fine. But it's great business. An example of that is that we ran a session across the membership a couple of weeks ago around how to win, deliver, and sell RPO, mini RPOs, I should say. And this is for SME recruitment businesses. And we had one of the members won £140,000 RPO contract 2 weeks later. So that's brilliant. I'm really excited by that. And it's a classic example of the types of things that are happening at the moment. We just showed them how to do it. The market is ripe and asking for it at the moment. So spending more time and money and reinvesting on things like RPO tech or any type of tech where you're getting a good return on investment. Think around your marketing strategy and your sales strategy as well. I'm a huge fan of AI. I love what AI is doing and has done to marketing and the sales funnel process. Again, some people see this as very much an alien thing. Some people see this as a dirty thing because it means that we're not having conversations with customers anymore and it's all robotic. Absolute rubbish. What it does do, it allows you to expedite and significantly increase the volume of conversations you're having with candidates and clients if you do it properly. And I think that's really super exciting as well. So resourcing teams, RPO tech, AI marketing funnels, all the fun, cool stuff that we hear and talk a lot about, but sometimes we find a little bit alien to us. Now is the time to be reinvesting our money into those areas. And some of the areas that we traditionally spent our money on, maybe we might want to have a bit of a rethink about that right now. So There's me rattling on as I always like to do, Laura. You know what I'm like. I like to sort of just regurgitate as much as I possibly can. So, we talked about that Zig Ziglar quote at the beginning, and he's absolutely right. What has passed has certainly passed now. We can't change what's happened over the last 12 to 18 months. Many a book is going to be written about it. I'm sure all of you have probably written your own books about it and that type of stuff. And I do hope we're going to look back on the last 12 to 18 months and realize that it's given us a huge, huge opportunity to change, to think, to re-embrace, to re-engineer, redesign, and make our businesses better businesses than tomorrow, and actually enjoy the journey a little bit more as well. So the next few chapters, I think, are very much yet to be written in this story. COVID hasn't gone away, won't go away, but it's certainly easing in the way that we can work. We're talking about the UK here. That's not obviously not belittling all the stuff that's going on in other places around the world, such as India and so on and so forth. But I do honestly believe that with the right people in your business who are pushed towards doing the things that they're good at and doing the right things, the right positioning of your business with your customers, and an absolute healthy fixation on profit generation, I think will basically steer you up for a very, very happy ending at the end of all this when we do look back on it. And the last thing I'll just close off on is that, and I said this to a lot of people, I honestly believe with the markets as they are at the moment, which are so, the word I'm using is frenetic. It's just full on and busy and stuff going on anywhere. And there's such a wonderful growth that I think what recruitment organizations do for the next 3 to 6 months will determine what your business will be like in the next 5 years. So I think this is possibly the most important time in this whole COVID story, is basically how do you now capitalize, maximize, dare I say it, exploit the return to and the recovery out of COVID. Great opportunity, and I think a very exciting opportunity as well.
Thanks, James. Hopefully you all agree that was incredibly insightful. I was scribbling some key takeaways, which I'm going to take folks through just to reiterate some of the points that James made. But we would also love to hear your questions. Please do ask any questions. We didn't have any come in. We normally do. I am more than happy to sit talking to James and asking him more questions on what he outlined, but I'm sure you would like to ask your own. So I scribbled probably 15 key takeaways from that. I mean, there was masses in there, James. But just to reiterate, here's some things that you can take away from this today to think about in your business. Firstly, enabling a candidate UX without barriers. Enabling your employees to play to their strengths, embracing graduate talent pools, considering your internal reward mechanisms for hiring. I love that £100 versus £5,000 stat. I'm sure there's a lot of recruiters going, please pay me £5,000 for recruiting all my friends. Being prepared to trade off elements of the home office working environment for productivity, but proactively supplementing where you know you're going to be missing things. Cash is still king, but business development is not a cash cow. It is not just a cash cow. So making sure you're working towards the long-term positioning of your business and asking yourself how you actually move into the boardroom. I love that, the boardroom versus the front office mentality. Focusing on bottom-up profitability and engineering your business appropriately and measuring profitability per consultant. Walking away from poor business and trying to increase your stickiness with the good stuff. And of course, I'm going to say it, automating repetitive tasks. We would mention Hairfish here, but other automation products are available. We don't have any Q&A that's come in, so I'm going to ask you a quick question, James. That was a lot about what people can actually do, proactive actions they've taken. Over the last kind of 15 months, what have you seen attitudinally that has made people a success? Has it been focus? Has it been drive? Has it been, I don't know, people first type mentality? Have there been consistent characteristics in the attitudes of those who are now coming out flying?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a healthy sense of reality. And that's what this whole thing is all about, is, in business, and I subscribe to this as much as anybody else. In business, it's very easy to put up a front about what's actually going on around us, sort of stuff. We go to conferences and everyone goes, how's your business doing? Yeah, I'm smashing it. How's your business doing? Yeah, I'm smashing it. There's a reality going on here. We've all got challenges and issues that we're facing, and it's been acceptable over COVID for us to actually talk about and air some of our concerns. You know, LinkedIn has turned into Facebook, right? Is that a bad thing? Maybe some people say yes, it is, but I quite like the fact that people are being human again a little bit more as well. But one of the things that's really happened is that people have just become that there's like transparency is now existing. All the sort of the rubbish, the jackets we used to wear, which is all very much sales, whatever expression you want to use, BS, let's call it, I think has now been cast aside. We're much closer to our customers, having much more honest conversations with our customers and them back to us. That's brilliant. We're much more honest about what our businesses are actually doing, how good they are and where they're not very good. That's brilliant. We're a lot more honest with our staff about what's working and what we're feeling and what we should be doing. You know, how many organizations this year have gone out to all of their staff and actually asked them what you want to do next year? I mean, we don't do that normally, sort of stuff. We do to an extent, but not to the level that we've done it this year. That's brilliant, and so on and so forth. So the realism, the transparency, the honesty that's coming out of COVID, I really, really hope doesn't go away. It will to an extent, sadly. But so is that an attitudinal thing? Possibly it might be. You know, yes, you can talk about resilience and you can talk about all those types of things. You know, we're Mental Health Awareness Week this week in particular. So resilience has been challenged more than everybody else. Everyone's mental health has been challenged. You know, we've all had crazy down moments and down times. I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to in tears over the last 12 to 18 months. It's been tough. I've been in tears. We've all had been, right? It's just the reality. We're human beings. Let's get over that fact. So I think the real attitudinal thing is now it's okay to be real. And it's okay to actually cast aside all the sort of the wrapper around business and just focus on the heartbeat of what makes a great business. I'll give you one more example of this. Actually, there's an organization that we've just done a complete rebuild of their strategy. Really great business, growing exponentially, big growth plans. And we looked at the business. There's some holes, there's some challenges. It's creaking, it's cracking because of what's been going on this last 12 months. Done an amazing, they've grown profitably and everything else. They've had record quarters, but it's still creaking. So we've rebuilt the business structure, the strategy. We've built a new roadmap for the business. And guess what we did? We shared it with all of the staff. And guess what else we did? We asked the staff to share it with their customers. So we're actually telling the external market, we've had a tough year, but we've done something. We had a tough year, but we still made profit and everything. We've still grown. But we want to now do an even bigger growth journey. And this is where what we learned about ourselves and how we're going to behave differently. How cool is that when we can actually go to our customers and say, hey, come and have a look inside my business? You know, that's why the classic, some of these American companies like the GitLabs of this world, why they share their playbooks online is because they want you to look inside their business because they're proud of it. They're honest and they're real about it. And they might learn from that as well. So I think the attitudinal thing is that let's just be real. We're all people here. We're all in sheds and in our bedrooms and all that type of stuff. We're all trying to figure this out. We have figured it out. We're working out where it's going, but let's not lose that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've had one question and one comment. So I'm just going to read the comment because it's a really lovely one. Thank you, Liz Holderness, for your comment. She wrote, interesting chat, James. Thanks very much. The key things we focused as an executive search business is our purpose, mission, impact, and values. That sounds very familiar, James. Over the last year, we've really focused on these with our clients, candidates, and especially our own people. This has led to a successful year despite the pandemic, and we just had our 11th person join in the last 6 months. Wow. So investing in your own people and building a culture of values and purpose is hugely valuable. Yeah, I know that you would absolutely concur with values and purpose, James.
Yeah, and I do, and I think Liz, you're completely spot on with that, and you know, absolutely fair play to you for having a good year considering what's been going on and what you've done and the way you've done it. I think the one thing I'll say is there's a lot of recruitment businesses out there who are currently licking their wounds a little bit because of how they treated some of their people and how they still are treating some of their people. You know, I know a lot of rec to recs out there on the marketplace, and we speak to them all the time about what's going on. And actually, do you know what? There's a lot of really good talent at the moment that's gearing up to leave recruitment businesses because they're just not happy about how they've been treated or actually how they are currently being treated as well. So, Liz, you're spot on with that. You know, it's about our people. This is what we're nothing without our people in recruitment. Absolutely nothing without them.
Well, leading on, so we've just had another question, and Steve Reckley, I will get to your question. This is an interesting question. Do you think the ship has sailed for many companies regarding being an employer of choice? Because the people first employers have shown their true colours during the pandemic, which is great. But unfortunately, the people last employers did the same. Is it possible to turn the ship around, James?
Yeah, of course it is. I think it's a I don't know who said that.
Anonymous.
Anonymous. Fair play. Obviously, there's something sitting behind that, and fair play to you. No, but you know, the reality is, let's just take one big step back a second. There's been a huge expectation on recruitment business leaders to have played the perfect hand over COVID. Let's just never forget that many people have never been through this before. And a lot of people were sort of making the strategy up as they go. It's been a very, very, very tough time for a lot of businesses. Now, don't get me wrong. Some organizations, I don't think have done a great job of this. Not from any fault of their own, just because they just didn't quite figure it out and the cars didn't quite fall in the way they wanted them to fall. On the flip side of that, there are some organizations that have clearly utilized this as an opportunity, I think, to get rid of people, do the wrong thing by their people and focus more on the boardroom and the shareholders within the business and so on and so forth. And I've seen, sadly, some things I don't particularly would like to see, and I certainly wouldn't want to talk about, where you've got organizations, I think, doing things that I don't think are necessarily ethical or correct. But that's what happens in these situations. It's like a wartime, right? People just respond to these things in the way they want to respond to it. So will people remember that? Of course they will remember that. The question becomes, I think people will be empathetic to the people who try to do the right thing here and maybe have got it wrong, as much as they will be excited by the organizations who have got it right. I think people will certainly feel scarred, and they will certainly walk away from organizations that I think played an unethical card game in this process.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I don't think that's just in our industry. I think that's
of course not.
Across the globe. I'm sorry, Steve, we finally got to your question. So Steve said, we've adopted a PWS subscription model for perm business. Is this the same as a mini RPO in your mind? So quite different.
Yeah, Steve, absolutely it is. And it's really interesting. We love a good acronym in the recruitment sector. And it's not you, Steve, but we all love a good acronym. And it's really interesting that in we've seen talent as a service, recruitment as a service, just about anything else you can put as a service, people as a service. I presume that's what your P is. We've got RPO. We won a big contract with one of the members back at the beginning of the first lockdown, actually, which was a multi-million-pound contract. It was a brilliant contract, and it was called TTP, Total Talent Partnership. It's the same thing, right? One of the things I quite like about having these little acronyms a little bit, actually, is because it productizes them. It makes them something real. That's like, oh, what is this PAS? What is this RAS, TAS, whatever you want to call it? In principle, they're all doing the same sort of thing. The principle is you're going out there to win multiple volume, lengthy business with your customers, where they're paying you on some form of recurring revenue stream or some description. That should ultimately reduce their overall costs from a talent perspective. That's not by reducing margins, make that fundamentally clear, but it's by through productivity improvements across everything to do with their people side of things. And it's more of an embedded consultative-led solution. So, Steve, yes, pretty much exactly the same sort of thing. I'm sure there are variations and slight differences in all these different things, but in principle, all these things are exactly the same. What a lot of organizations have done, I think, really, really well over COVID is they've created their product suites, their different types of services, whether it be a contingent product, retained product, rolling retained product, etc. And they've renamed them something that means something to them, and less so that means something to the industry. And a classic example of that is retainers. Retainers have gone through the roof. I mean, they really, really have. It's been wonderful. But I don't look at a retainer as a third of the fee up front and a third on shortlist and a third on placement, which is a traditional retainer, and probably what a lot of customers think means retainer. I look at a retainer as 10 or 20% of the fee up front and the rest on placement. Not quite as exciting potentially from a cash flow point of view, but what's the point of a retainer? It's to lock a customer in and make sure they don't go somewhere else so you can improve your conversion ratios. So as long as you've got lots of 10% up front, you're probably going to guarantee, providing you can fill the jobs, you're probably going to guarantee a hell of a lot better conversion ratios than you would be otherwise. And I think in this current market, a lot easier to convince someone to give you 10% of the fee up front, lock them in, build a great business and do a proper recruitment job with them as a partnership, than it is to try and convince someone maybe to give you a third of the fee up front, or even 2/3 by the time before they've actually had anything. So, giving it your own name sometimes takes away some of the old traditional concepts or what people thought were the principles behind some of those things.
Fabulous. Thank you, James. And we didn't have any more questions, so we can wrap up. I think what we've heard today is that in order to succeed tomorrow, the focus of recruitment leaders has to now shift away from many of those superficial measurements that we were using before: turnover, headcount, presenteeism, inputs, supplier agreements, hierarchies. You heard James mention all of those. And move instead towards business models that are more fixated on directly impacting the 3 key drivers of great business: Just to remind you, people, positioning and profits, and beautiful slides, James, thank you. And I know we all want to end on a positive note because we're all feeling sunnier and more positive. Here's some of the latest stats from REC, if you haven't seen them. Permanent placement rose for the first time in 2021, as did the demand for permanent staff. And the vacancies were increasing at the quickest rate in healthcare, followed by the IT and computing sector. Temporary billings and demand for temps continued to increase in March for 9 months in a row, in particular in blue collar, IT and computing sectors, followed closely by the financial sector. Not only that, but confidence is on the up. Now, I love this slide. I know that I'm definitely feeling that the world is just that little bit brighter, literally and metaphorically. And next week we can hug. So that's definitely all heading in the right direction. And I know, James, you absolutely share that feeling. 2021 will no doubt be another unprecedented year that none of us have lived through before and hope to probably never again, with its own set of challenges. But if you think about the key questions we've outlined, you'll no doubt help your business to not just survive, but thrive for years to come. We would love to be part of your inevitable success story. Remember that Bullhorn, along with our marketplace partners, is always here to support your technology needs. Thank you for listening. We hope to connect with you at a real life event very, very soon. Take care and have a good rest of the day.